Issues. I'm Storm, and I have a very quick question for you. And that question goes a little something like this. How are you? How the devil art thou? It's been a little while. I must admit I'm a little bit late with this episode, but better late than never, and I'm hoping that this sort of thing will not happen again. And I'm also hoping to make it up to you with a couple of episodes coming up soon. I don't want to say any more than that. I don't want to spoil the surprise. But anyway, on with tonight's episode. I already touched upon this briefly in a live stream recently, but like many others, I wanted to give something that I can consider an actual tribute. You don't need me to tell you that on November 12, 2018, the legendary Stan the Man Lee passed away at 95 years old. And when the news broke, it affected so many people out there because Stan Lee had been a big part of so many people's lives, and he was a true hero in the eyes of many. He had led a storied life, and during it, he gave us all so many stories to share, enjoy, and tell. He was a champion of comic books, and some would even say that Stan Lee was comic books. There's so much that can be said about Stan Lee, and many people around the globe have shared their thoughts and condolences. Artists from the field have drawn tributes to Stan Lee and his many creations, and I did consider doing the same, but for some reason it just didn't feel like the right thing for me to do in order to honour his life and work. Especially as while I may be an artist, I'm a writer and storyteller first. So I took some time to think about how I would like to honour Stan Lee, and I remembered that in a documentary, Stan Lee had talked about the first story he wrote for Timely Comics. A 2-page filler for Captain America, and after a little bit of hunting and research, I found that story. So tonight, I would like to honour Stan Lee and everything he has done by reading that story for you. So please, sit back and relax as I present to you a little tale called Captain America Foils the Traitors' Revenge. I'm sorry, Haynes, but there is no place in this army camp for the likes of you. You have lied, cheated, spied, and stolen. Your conduct is no longer tolerable, and I'm giving you a dishonorable discharge. Now get out. Private Steve Rogers, doing sentry duty nearby, was watching the scene interestedly. He had never seen Colonel Stevens so angry, and Lou Haynes, too, was threateningly mad. The muscular giant shook his enormous fist at the Colonel. Okay, Colonel, snarled Lou. I'll get out, but let me warn you now, you ain't seen the last of me. I'll get even somehow, mark my words, you'll pay for this. Haynes walked towards the camp gates, muttering insults under his breath. Suddenly, Haynes felt a strong hand grasp his arm. He looked around into the flashing eyes of Steve Rogers. I wouldn't act like that if I were you, muttered Steve softly. You were insulting a man in the uniform of the United States Army. Here are the camp gates. Now beat it. Haynes left, but there was a look of hate in his eyes which Steve could not help but notice. Later that evening, Steve Rogers was sitting in his tent playing checkers with his young sidekick Bucky, the camp mascot. Bucky looked disappointed. Gosh, Steve, wailed Bucky, don't you ever lose a game? I've forgotten what it feels like to win. Steve smiled cheerfully. I'll tell you what, kid. Suppose you borrow a book on how to play checkers and read it. That'll give me a chance to get some shut-eye. You don't know how tired it makes me to beat you all the time. Steve ducked just in time to dodge the pillow that Bucky threw at him. Why, you little squirt, he grinned. I ought to put you over my knee. Oh yeah, you big palooka? You in what other army? Bucky picked up another pillow and was holding it ready. Suddenly, Steve's smile left his face and he put his fingers to his lips. Listen, he whispered. Bucky put down the pillow and was silent. He knew that Steve's sensitive hearing must have detected something important. Then Steve spoke. There it is again, Bucky. 3 pairs of footsteps outside Colonel Stevens' tent. We better look into this. In an instant, both Steve and Bucky peeled off their outer uniforms, and seconds later, they stood, revealed as Captain America and Bucky, sentinels of our shores. Let's go, cried Captain America. The 2 trouble hunters leapt from their tent and noiselessly trod to Colonel Stevens' quarters. Outside his tent were 3 tough-looking thugs.
Will we all rush him at once?
Asked the first. Captain America saw that the man he was talking to was Lou Haines. "Nah," sneered Haines. "You guys stay here and keep Chicky. I'll go in and tend to him myself." Then Captain America noticed that Haines was holding a wicked-looking knife in his hand. "Not a second to lose!" cried the red, white, and blue knight as he raced towards the three assassins like an avenging hurricane. Lou Haines was the first to see the twin tornadoes rushing at him. "Take care of these two fancy pants," he ordered his men. "I'll attend to the colonel in a second." Haines' two accomplices grinned as they watched Captain America and Bucky speeding towards them. They took out their revolvers and prepared to fire, but Captain America suddenly picked up Bucky by his arms and swung him right into the two thugs, knocking their guns out of reach. "All right, Bucky, my lad," he cried. "See how brave they are without their toys." Then he dashed into the tent. Inside the tent, the American Avenger saw Lou Haines about to plunge his knife into the sleeping colonel's heart. There wasn't time for Captain America to reach Haines before the evil deed could be done, but with the speed of thought, he sent his shield spinning through the air to the other end of the tent where it smacked the knife out of Haines' hand. Then the mighty crime fighter leaped at Haines and landed a blow at his head. But the traitorous ex-soldier seemed to just shake off the blow, and he grabbed Captain America by the throat with his tremendous fingers. As Haines forced more and more pressure into his grip, Captain America began to get weaker and weaker. His eyes grew dim, and it became difficult for him to breathe. But he managed to summon all his remaining strength into one last effort and brought his right fist up under Haines' jaw with enough force to fell an ox. No human being could have stood that blow, and Haines instantly relaxed his grip and sank to the floor, unconscious. Outside the tent, Captain America found the other two crooks tied back to back, and Bucky was standing over them, patting their heads. "I do hope I wasn't too rough with them, Cap," said the gallant lad. The next morning, Colonel Stevens was talking with Private Rogers. "Rogers," he said, "this morning I found 3 men tied outside my tent with a note pinned on them reading, 'Regards from Captain America and Bucky.' Now, you have the tent next to mine. Did you hear anything last night?" "No, sir," answered Steve. "I was sound asleep." "Asleep?" roared the colonel. "Captain America and Bucky mopped up 3 armed men by themselves and saved my life, and you were asleep? Oh, why can't I have some soldiers like Captain America in this army instead of you?" But Colonel Stevens didn't notice the grin on Private Rogers' face as he left the tent. And there you have it. That is Captain America Foils the Traitors' Revenge by Stan Lee, the very first story that Stan Lee wrote for Timely Comics as a 2-page filler for an issue of Captain America. Now, I'm going to have to apologize if you got confused with some of the voices. I didn't exactly rehearse this too well, but that's kind of the fun of it. Besides, back in the day, they used to have crazy short deadlines when it came to writing and drawing comics and stuff, so it only seemed appropriate to do this in a short amount of time and just hope for the best. But either way, I hope you enjoyed my reading of that story. And now, I guess I have nothing left to say except for this. Thank you, Stan. You are missed by so many of us, and we will never, ever forget you. And to those of you listening, I just want to say thank you very much for listening, and until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and stay awesome.